Excellent, gentlemen. I want you to introduce yourselves to this fantastic audience, and we're going to do it slightly differently. Most certainly tell them your name. They want to know who you are. Tell them who you work for, what you do. But if you can, share one, maybe two high-level introduction, experience, understanding of a cybersecurity incident that you've been involved in. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I've worked with all three of these people right here. So how cool is that? We'll start with the gentleman at the very end, please.
Thank you, Joseph. Afternoon, everyone. So my name is Daniel Kabucho Akori, and I'm a technical solution specialist at Liquid C2. It's quite interesting the route we're taking by mentioning the different incidences we've been exposed to of our careers. So I've had my fair share of quite interesting incidences. I've spent quite a lot of sleepless nights in offices trying to counteract these incidences. And they are mostly centered around the common things we know: ransomware, social engineering campaigns, malware. And now, as we can see now from the Kenya Anonymous Sudan attacks that were happening, denial of service attacks. So it's a learning curve as well. You know, cybersecurity is ever evolving. These threats are ever evolving. We've now introduced the fact of AI and things such as cybercrime as a service. So it's up to us to always upskill ourselves and ensure that we are almost at the same level as these attackers, if not better, just to be able to counteract these different incidences that we see. So I hope that's okay of an introduction.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. We'll go over to Tim.
Yeah, so at least I don't need to introduce my name. CISO M-Pesa Africa. I was trying to think of which incident I would discuss, but my colleague already beat me to it when he mentioned Anonymous Sudan. Our friends there who had some grievances with our network services, and quite a lot of learnings. I think we will delve into them later. But I think for me, maybe the biggest thing in terms of during an incident is communicate. That cannot be overemphasized. It's important to collaborate with your customers, partners, stakeholders anytime during an incident.
Thank you, Tim.
Right. Nice to see all of you. My name is Sami Mate. I represent two organizations today. I represent ALN Africa. ALN Africa is a network of legal firms across about 15 geographies in Africa, but also represent a group called Adili Group, which provides business advisory services such as cyber risk, interesting, obviously corporate services, corporate secretarial services. We actually do have a SOC that we also extend to our clients. We provide services such as fiduciary services also, even managed IT services and forensics. And a lot of people ask me this question, so what's an IT person doing at a law firm? And so perhaps part of this conversation will go a little bit deeper in what's the place of the legal counsel? What's the legal space saying about cybersecurity? In terms of real-world events, I hope you'll understand what my response will be. Because of lawyer-client confidentiality, I'll try and protect my clients quite a bit, but we've dealt with quite a few ransomware incidences, and I'm trying not to say which ones, because some of you, especially seated here in Kenya, will say, I know who you're talking about now. Okay. But in the past, I've also dealt with quite a bit of the normal attacks that you normally deal with, malicious phishing, social engineering, and so I'll be very interested to hear perspectives on that. Thank you.
You just played the lawyer card on us. How interesting. The other member of our panel was supposed to be Miss Songo. I'm hoping she'll be able to join us, or she's online now. Miss Songo, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon and welcome. Yes, now we see you on the screen.
Good afternoon.
Excellent to see you. We're doing a quick round of self-introduction. So if you can just tell us who you are, your name, and maybe one or two incidences that you've been involved in, or play the lawyer card on us. It's acceptable as an answer today. Please go ahead.
Okay. Stimula Songo, Head of Information Security at ESCOM. ESCOM is basically a company that is responsible for generating, transmitting, and distributing electricity. So my role is to make sure that electricity is generated in a secured manner. Some of you are probably based in South Africa and you're very much aware about the challenges that we are facing as an organization. But my role is to make sure that cyber breaches do not contribute to those challenges. And that is why today's topic is very important. So in terms of me partaking in a crisis, I haven't such, but I have partook in serious incidents or where we had to investigate whether it's a cyber breach or not. So yeah, that actually requires proper planning. Because if you don't have proper planning in place, you won't even know where to start. And as a result, you might end up responding quite late. And we know when it comes to incident, time is of essential effect. Because if you respond late, you might end up facing a major cyber breach, whereas it could have been just a minor incident that you could have resolved. So in our case, there were a number of instances whereby there were allegations that we've been hacked. And in such an instance, it's similar to an incident because you need to validate whether that is true or not. You need to follow the same steps that you follow when you resolve an incident. And because we are responsible for protecting the national critical infrastructure, we're also governed by laws and regulations. So we have to abide to those laws. And we have no choice but to make sure that we have all those relevant processes in place. So basically, in summary, it requires collaboration. And you make it a point that you consider people, processes, and technology. Because if one of these items fail, you won't be able to respond effectively to the incident.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction from everyone here. And fantastic setup. Thank you to the organizers, TX5, in making sure we have a wide representative from South Africa, from the legal field, from telco, across field. Let's get into the discussions. My first question will go to you, Tim. And we're talking about managing a crisis, but let's go just before the crisis. How do you prepare for a cybersecurity incident? Does it differ, your preparation, for a major incident? And you can give us an example of what you would consider to be a major incident versus one that can be seen as benign. What's your preparation around that?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about both a major incident and one that is not major. Interesting enough, one of the most common incidences that we face, it's not something that is visible, is with our customers. A customer one Friday night goes out to a club, has one or two drinks, spots a lady at the other end of the club, and goes and tries to make a friendship. And the next thing he remembers is he's waking up on Sunday evening. His M-Pesa account has been stolen. It's empty, and he has many questions to ask. It's not something that is visible, but remember, for us as a purpose-led technology company, transforming lives, we want to transform lives positively. And having an empty M-Pesa account is not something that would positively transform lives. So what is required in terms of the planning and preparation? It might sound very simple, but it's something actually very hard and complicated because we have over 10 incidences on a daily basis just on that example. Awareness, we do the awareness planning. We've even had a dedicated YouTube channel just on trying to create awareness around security, safety of your M-Pesa PIN. And by the way, one of the most common things, and I hope all of you are M-Pesa customers, and all of you have chosen a pin which is not your birth year or your son's birth year, for goodness sake, or otherwise we will not be responsible CISOs if we don't practice the same security that we preach out there. But I think that's the first step, awareness, trying to actually inoculate a culture of self-security, so that it can reduce your exposure, basically. Because when your customer is hacked using your platform, it means basically you've been hacked. Then, of course, there's the big incidences, the big daddy in the room, the DDoS attacks. And it follows a similar pattern, scenario planning, preparation. One of the key learnings we took out of that incident is basically trying to actually test ourselves, trying to test our systems. You don't wait for the hacker to test your system and tell you have a vulnerability here. So actually trying to test even from our own side, can we be able to initiate a DDoS attack on our own infrastructure? Will we be able to resist? Are we resilient? Will we be able to recover? Will we be able to detect that particular case? We have been doing the same. We have collaborated with the ethical white hacker community. Safaricom was the first to launch the bug bounty program, and even M-Pesa Africa itself also followed suit and launched its own dedicated bug bounty program covering all the M-Pesa markets across all of Africa. Because remember, you cannot be able to protect yourself 100%. It's works. It's more efficient, more effective to collaborate with the community out there, so that any vulnerabilities that are spotted out there, instead of someone taking advantage of them, you can actually be communicated to the same, and you can be able to close that vulnerability. We call it a sort of a reverse ransomware. So instead of someone exploiting the vulnerability, someone is paid now not to exploit the vulnerability.
Very good. So you've shared there's an element of awareness to those who might be victims of a major or minor incident as a key component of getting ready to manage the crisis, also in understanding the weaknesses that might exist in your processes and your systems. Daniel, let me come to you and talk about you probably interact with tens, maybe hundreds of critical alerts that would generate in any given time, in any given day. What informs you that you have a major cybersecurity incident in your hands right now?
Okay, thank you, Joseph. So, yes, there is definitely the aspect of thousands of alerts and incidences and false positives coming in through the different cybersecurity solutions that may be in play in an organization. But there are key red flags that one has to look out for. For example, system or service disruptions or any form of downtime. That could be a potential very major incident occurring, the likes of a denial of a service or a ransomware attack occurring. Also, the unusual or anomalous behavior patterns, something that is out of the normal. So, for example, if we are seeing a surge on network traffic, or we are seeing an increased unauthorized access attempt at 3 a.m. I mean, these are things that don't happen on a day-to-day basis. So they should actually cause a reaction from you. So it does take an individual to be able to filter out most of the noise and actually focus on the key indicators of compromise that can lead to a major incident occurring, or a crisis in this case.
Awesome. So you are prepared. You have a distinction between all the alerts that are coming in. You have a way of identifying this one is considered to be perhaps one that requires a bit more attention, but all along you're consuming this data on a consistent basis. Mr. Sami, the incident has occurred. We're right in the middle of it. Who do you call first?
Who do you call first? The Ghostbusters now.
I was fairly certain you'd crack that.
Yeah. Let me start first by saying I don't think we have enough breaches yet. And that's sort of a bit of a counterintuitive statement to speak of. But in the West, I think we've had enough breaches and enough attacks so that we can start sort of drawing a lot of learnings from it. In Africa, not as yet. We have a few, and they're obviously increasing, but we still have a lot to learn because we have not necessarily been able to have enough incidences to start to put the dots together. So let me open up by saying that. But But again, let me start talking a little bit about what Daniel has talked about. And earlier these mornings on the slides, you've had a lot of people talking about this CSAT, your computer or cybersecurity incident response team. One of the things that we have learned as we've interacted with our clients is that we now need to bring in more legal counsel into these teams. I don't know whether any of you has a CSAT. If you don't have, don't put your hand up. Might be a career limiting move. But the typical CSAT teams would have a lot of technical people. You may have a few forensics people. Now we are seeing more and more often a need to bring in legal counsel way ahead, even before the incident happens. You know why? Because a lot of the times, and for those who are familiar with a lot of the data protection laws that are now coming into force, you'll recognize that there's a requirement on reporting now. Okay. Now, for example, in Kenya, you have data controller and data processor requirements for reporting, 48, 72 hours. And so how much time do you have to put all this stuff together and provide the requisite reporting mechanisms? That means you need to bring in the right resources into that team. So we've discovered a legal counsel, very important. Typically, we don't have, a lot of CSATs do not have a forensic person. Okay, so somebody who ensures that we're keeping the right data and ensuring that you're using that data properly even as we handle the incident. And so it's important to have that. So it's not only technical people, it's not only just leaders in your critical incident response team. And so I think it's very important to bring in legal counsel right at the beginning. Now, one of the other things we've also discovered that as you go through this incident, you may recognize that it has been caused by one of your somebody in your supply chain. So how do you handle it from a litigation perspective or a legal perspective? And so these are some of the reasons why you need to bring in these people early enough. And so for me, I think it's important that you have the right CSAT team in place and do these drills as often as possible, okay? If you're doing, for example, ethical hacking, pen testing, that you're able to bring in these particular teams to interact with some of what those results really look like. So I think that's what I'd say at this point.
Awesome. I'm glad you've touched on the regulatory environment and the impact that there would be. It's no longer a private discussion. You now have potentially Central Bank of Kenya or the primary bank of whichever country you're operating in that you require to report. You have as data privacy requirements. It's fantastic that you recognize that this become critical stakeholders in managing your way through the incident. Ms. Songo, if we still have you online, I want to now look at the leadership side of dealing with the crisis. And right at the heart of it, you are sleep deprived. You've been going for 30 hours, no sleep. Your team members are snapping at each other. Guys are irritated. The senior management team are asking for an update every 10 minutes. Stakeholders are getting frustrated because systems are down. How do you stay calm? What do you focus on? How do you focus on the mission? Ms. Songo, are you still there? Did you get me?
Okay. This is a very good question. And if you ask many people who have gone through a crisis, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead. Yes, we can.
Okay. So I was saying that this is a very good question. And if you ask many people who have been through a crisis before, they'll tell you that people do get exhausted. And that's where the collaboration comes in. And the leadership needs to take its place by making sure that you allocate teams accordingly so that they can take turns. Collaborating with different departments as well. For instance, in our space, every time we investigate a potential incident, we make it a point that we collaborate with the teams because you can't do everything in silos. And our mandate is to make sure that we are able to resolve the incident as quick as possible. We also leverage on AI machine learning, because it then takes the load away from the people. In most cases, you find that people have to spend time analyzing alerts, analyzing or prioritizing what is more critical. So if you leverage on AI and machine learning, you are able to even make those decisions faster. I can make a practical example. When I joined the organization that I'm working for right now, I had to find myself working. On my first weekend, I was working because there were allegations that we've been hacked, and we had to investigate and provide assurance to the board and the execs. Okay? And it took time because there was a lot of manual intervention required. And obviously, people were exhausted quite a lot. I meant the current headcount with some automation, AI and machine learning, which is able to detect and respond in real time. And that's exactly what we did. 6 months later, when we came across the same type of incident, it was easy for us to quickly realize or inform the execs of the board whether we've been hacked or not, of which we were not. So I must emphasize that leveraging on AI and machine learning is very important so that we can quickly respond, but not only quickly respond, also take the load away from the people, because some of the tasks are now automated. As a result, your team is not now too exhausted because of the investigation that has to take hours and hours, just because you haven't centralized, for instance, your assets, and you haven't centralized your monitoring capabilities. So that's what has helped. But other than that, collaboration with teams and making a point that you take shifts, and also maybe leverage on HR, because HR do have some human capabilities that can assist in terms of augmenting or motivating your team when they are exhausted and so forth. But those are the things that incident happens. There's an analogy that I like to make, which goes like, if an individual gets bitten by the snake, you need to know what snake bit you as quick as possible so that you can administer the right antivenom. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, by the time you administer it, it might be too late, and you'll find that the poison has actually traveled into your critical systems of or critical organs of your body. As a result, you die. Same thing applies in the network. If you have a malicious activity going on, you need to make sure that you identify it as quick as possible and make sure that you balance your staff that needs to act on those malicious activities so that it doesn't necessarily travel to your critical organ, also not organs this time around, to your critical assets. And then as a result, you find yourself wanting as an organization. So like I said earlier on, whatever that could have just been an incident, it ends up being a major cyber breach. So yes, that balance. Earlier on, I said you need to make sure that you take people, processes, and technology into consideration. So you asked about the people aspect. So people must be augmented by the relevant technologies to take the load away and make it a point that you identify roles and responsibilities well in advance so that people can be able to at least take shifts whenever there's a crisis.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. Absolutely. As she spoke, interesting. There's a speaker earlier on this morning who said something that I resonated with, that it's important that you know yourself, you know your enemy. Okay? And I found that to be very interesting, because when you look at your own organization, who knows you so well and who knows your enemy? I can almost guarantee you your lawyer does. Okay? I'm coming back there. If you look at your own person as an individual, there are always two professions I always say who in a sense will know you better than anybody else, your lawyer and the doctor. Okay? And so for me, I think it's important from a leadership perspective that you get people, especially in the context of that crisis, who know you and especially know the external environment very well, and your attack landscape very well, and so that you're able to deal with it with the right context.
Great, thank you for that. I did want to react to something you had said earlier on that I didn't get a chance to do so. Thanks to our sponsors and who make this event possible. I think you heard him say that we don't have enough attacks just yet, isn't it? We need a bit more to get us more motivated and focused on this. So I think it's an important one. Ms. Songa, you also said something that I think is so important. Two things. We keep on wondering how best to leverage AI. And as you can hear, how do we utilize AI's capability of learning as a tool, as another individual to counteract the attacker within your environment? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not spending enough time in AI as a practitioner in this space, you're missing out on something. It's so very important that you try and understand from a leadership perspective how that can be able to augment what you're doing. The second one is on the humans. Early in my career, I was in an environment where they had an incident. It went on for 96 hours. You would find engineers sitting behind the keyboards and they fall asleep. Straight there. So if you're not flowing your people in and out, it becomes chaos. Daniel, in your experience, what are some of the things that potentially become a distraction and they continue the crisis? Instead of bringing it to a close, you find yourself running around doing things that do not necessarily contribute to the solution.
Perfect. So I'll start off with what you mentioned. Fatigue is one of the key factors that might prolong the crisis. If an organization hasn't planned themselves well, hasn't delegated the tasks and the responsibilities of the team members, it will lead to fatigue. I've experienced this where you're pulling long hours in the office. Shout out to the coffee lovers. You have to stay quite caffeinated so that you can do your job. However, having a concrete plan, an incident response plan with the roles and the responsibilities of the different individuals in the team does actually enable you and assist to not prolong that particular crisis. And another factor, and this is something I've also witnessed, it's the excessive pressure that might come with an incident, particularly a major incident during the time of crisis. As you know, a lot of Kenyans now embracing cybersecurity. To some people, it might be a new thing. To some organizations, it might be a new thing, no matter how big or small you are. So that excessive pressure can really get to someone who's actually dealing with that particular incident. So the noise that may come maybe from the stakeholders, management, or even the customer coming from an MSSP perspective. So those are key factors that can really significantly prolong the extent of that crisis. Yeah. And also, planning yourself well is quite key, just ensuring you have everything in place, you're prepared, you've tested the technologies, because I have witnessed a scenario where a customer had all the security solutions in place, had a particular security solution that can deter cyber attacks. But the funny thing, they never tested that solution. So when they were hit with a ransomware, that solution was only on detection mode, instead of blocking all these attacks. So those are the key factors that someone can look out for to avoid primarily to not have a crisis to prolong its period.
Excellent. Tim, perhaps you can bring us towards the end of the crisis. Share with us some of the lessons learned from some of the cybersecurity incidences that you've gone through.
I would struggle where to start off in terms of learning. And like many other companies, the size of Safaricom, and if you combine that with M-Pesa Africa's team, cybersecurity team is over 50 plus. So would probably feel about maybe slightly more than a third of this room. So the struggle that we have is not because of fatigue. I mean, we have a rota and all of that from a incident management perspective. Probably internal coordination. That's one of the areas when you have such a large team with very many different skill sets, talents, getting the right person to do the right job, to speak to the right people is a challenge. Also important to coordinate. We mentioned that your lawyers might know, might be the person who knows best about you. But if you're going to the lawyers, then you know things are thick. By the time the lawyers are getting involved, things are going downhill. But before we talk to the lawyers, us, what we do is we talk with our regulators, with our customers. During any cyber incident, we have a crisis team that's immediately convened. And one of the first people to join that crisis team always is the PR team, because they're the ones who best know how to communicate with the customer. I remember one of the learnings we had from the DDoS incident was our channel, our M-Pesa app channel could not be accessed. But M-Pesa is up. It's 100% up, but from a customer side, and I don't blame them because they are our customers. From a customer side, they perceive that M-Pesa is down, and you know the worry, the fear that you have your 10,000 shillings there, and it's the only money you have between yourself and poverty, yeah? And you can't access it because the M-Pesa app is down. So one of the things that we did was to immediately issue an SMS blast to all our M-Pesa customers, just to mitigate their worries and inform them that there were other channels which they did not know that they could use the M-Pesa app. And I remember learning from that is quite a bit in terms of these other channels. Some of us might have forgotten the old SDK method or USSD. I remember, even myself, I could not remember the USSD, but I think that created some knowledge on the same. For the minor incident, maybe I think the biggest learning is in terms of how to be able to get feedback. We often hear these committee SMSs, send me money here. Now they have started with rent. Usitume huku, tuma huku kwingine. So we have a channel, dedicated channel, SMS, where you can forward those SMSs, 333. So anytime someone sends you a funny SMS, they're asking for your PIN or what have you, forward it to that particular number, and you will block it. But I think the main point is also working collaborative with your customers, communicating with them, so that the incident resolution and mitigation can be reduced.
Very good. Thank you. I want to give each of the panelists a chance to say one last thing as we close out, and also open it up to the audience in case they have any questions. We'll begin with you, Ms. Songa. And as you just talked through your closing remarks, if you can just share with us one critical character trait that as a leader you must exhibit during an incident. Please go ahead, Ms. Songa.
Okay. All right. One critical character trait is to make sure that you become focused and calm. Because if you're not focused and calm, you'll be everywhere. And as a result, you won't even be able to respond to the incident effectively. And also measuring your people, process and technology, people side of things, make it a point that everyone knows what is expected of him in terms of roles and responsibilities. Augment your people, because we know in the cyberspace globally there's a shortage of resources. So augment your staff with managed services when required if the incident is vast. That always works, actually. But from a technology point of view, what I realized as a leader, you need to know what's happening about attack now, so that you can also make sure that the technologies that you have, because nowadays you've got AI-enabled cyber attacks. If you don't have such technologies, you really struggle to respond to advanced incidents that are launched using AI. Actually, there's a study that shows that organizations that are using AI are able to respond as quick as possible. And I can attest to that, because ever since we started using AI, we are able to respond as quick as possible, compared to the time when we did not have AI. Actually, we even find ourselves responding to lesser incidents. Am I still online?
Yes, you are. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so actually we actually discover we are able to, we don't even have to respond to a number of incidents. This particular solution that we have is helping us to respond to a number of incidents. So as a leader, you need to make it a point that you become strategic also in your incident response, so that you can be more effective and focus on what matters the most. Because if you spend too much of your time responding to incidents that could have, for instance, been addressed by an automated solution, then you tend to exhaust your staff unnecessarily. So yes,
Great.
you need to be very much aware about what's happening out there, applied in necessary technologies in terms of the processes. Always have your plan and simulate potential incidents so that whenever that incident occurs, you are able to act as quick as possible. If you only check your plan on the day of an incident, you won't be able to act effectively. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Sami, let's go to you.
Yeah, let me say two things. And we're sort of trying to make this a little bit easier for people so that whenever you see, for example, the people we call lawyers, they're not necessarily because there's a problem, okay, but because they're part of your environment. And so we're hoping that that's not the picture that is actually coming out. We have so much faith that there'll be a few more breaches. Let me say that. We have so much. Let me say, I'll tell you why. One of the things I've learned dealing with some of the issues that we've dealt with some of our clients is that we are still not learning as quickly as we ought to. Okay, and so we'll still have a little bit more in terms of breaches. For example, when you talk to people about their business continuity and resiliency postures, you can tell we're not learning as quickly as we ought to. Because one of the things that compromises the response when you have a major incident issue is the pressure to get the business up and running. Now, if you can isolate the issue and so that your business is running, then you then move to a forensic posture where you're actually looking at what exactly happened to this particular system. And so what we've done is in view of that, recognized that a lot of organizations need help even in terms of running their own IT. So providing managed IT services where we start advising them on how to run their IT in terms of business continuity, proper business service, IT service management practices, and so on and so forth. And so that's one thing. The second thing I'll probably say in conclusion is this: because this is an Africa-wide forum, we still have a lot to learn across the continent in terms of our compliance postures. Some of you might be aware that in 2014, we, as a continent, we adopted what we call the Malabo Convention, which is the AU Convention on Cyber Security and Data Protection. That was 2014. But do you know, it was only until last year, June, when we got 15 countries in Africa to ratify them domestically. 15 last year, 10 years after. In fact, I'm of the opinion that that convention needs to be rethought because at that time there was no AI and so on and so forth. But you can tell from a compliance perspective, from a regulatory perspective, we're not learning, we're not working together as countries in terms of how we actually do that. Today, if you look at the countries that have DP laws, we only have 33, I think, across the continent. Quite a lot of countries, if you look at 55, not even having any laws in place. And so in parting, I'll probably say, I think we need to sort of help each other. It's not only the government's responsibility, we need to work together as an industry to help put this particular place, put pressure and say, hey, Kenya, by the way, Kenya hasn't adopted the Malabo Convention
Not
yet.
among the 15.
Yeah, it's not among the 15. So perhaps put pressure and say, why aren't we adopting these things? Because we had agreed on them 10 years ago. How come we've not adopted them? So I think there's some work to be done on that particular front.
Thank you, Sami. Tim?
Yeah, probably the first thing I'd probably politely disagree with my legal friend in terms of the number of incidences. Maybe it's the visibility of the incidences, because for every one incident that is there that hits the news, there is 100,000 which you have prevented, which you have blocked. But the regulator, the customer, the shareholder will only remember the one that you failed on, the one that brought you to the limelight. However, I think for me, maybe one of two things that I'd want to touch on. I know we focus a lot on technology, with AI, machine machine learning as a buzzwords. And by the way, in terms of AI and machine learning, it always impresses me how everybody talks about their leveraging and using that technology. And you ask them, where are you getting the data to be able to actually grow, to be able to learn, teach your AI and ML models. And at least for Safaricom, we have quite a bit of data, which we, of course, we have from our customers and we secure. And I know the challenges of trying to build those AI and machine learning models. So anyway, that was a separate note on technology, the buzzwords. But I think for me, the more important thing there was in terms of equally investing not only in technology but also in people and in processes, because technology can't run itself. It needs brains and it needs the process behind it that will ensure it's actually effective. Because without that, then you'll be basically dead in the water. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Daniel.
Perfect. So for me is to try be as prepared as possible. Of course, you can never be 100% ready for a cybersecurity incident. So it's a matter of constantly ensuring you do have both technical and non-technical controls in place just to assist you to mitigate these cybersecurity incidences and also to test these controls. I mean, we do see a lot of customers who say, yes, I have a security policy. And I remember panelists did say this, to what extent and which percentage are you following your cybersecurity policy? And it cuts across the whole organization from the executives to a normal user. So it does pay a lot to test on your infrastructure, on your people, on your assets. You have a solution, is it running optimally? Those are key things I believe we should follow suit. And also sharing of information. What we pride ourselves as Liquid C2 is we do have exposure on a lot of incidences coming on the African space. And what we do is we do share this information through threat advisories to our customers and our partners. I believe if we're able to share a lot of the information we receive, because I know there are a lot of industry leaders here, it can significantly assist us be able to deter most of these security incidents. Because I'm sure, and this is a known fact, an incident that might occur maybe in South Africa today, in the next few weeks or months, the same thing might be happening in Kenya or Nigeria. So if we share this information, we can significantly be able to improve our overall security posture as a country and organizations.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that very insightful panel.